what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Game Industry Executive Summary. This is Casey, and as usual, the exquisite Manu Rosier is with us today, and the dashing Dave there. Dave was just telling us about him coming back. He's been traveling a lot. We're really happy about having you back, Dave.
I am happy to be back.
What's been up in your life?
You know, I spent 3 weeks over there in the United States of America. That's a largish country, kind of to the west of Portugal. Yeah, it was
The land of freedom.
Yes. So I've heard. Seeing family, doing that whole thing. Landed yesterday, then took a train over here to Cologne to see my other family in the video games industry.
Awesome. Welcome back, man. We've missed you. Originally, we wanted to kind of like sit together. No, by the way, we're both in Köln for Gamescom, and we're too old to figure out how to get the mics to work if we were sitting in the same room. But this is something we're going to keep in mind for the next one, to try and maybe find equipment that we can. I was looking at these clipping mics, the Rode clipping mics for mobile. They're really good. I've seen so many videos of people using them, so we'll look at that. Shift over quickly to Manu. How are you, man?
Good. I'm not driving. Safe at home.
Okay.
No, nothing.
Safe at home.
Yeah.
That's it. Safe.
Okay.
That's where we want Manu to be safe. It's important.
Awesome. By the way, Dave, are you joining us at dinner tonight? Can you make it?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh,
yeah.
Perfect.
I got.
Awesome.
I'm across the river. It's over on this side of things, right? By the in the cathedral side. Awesome.
Exactly. Okay, cool. Yeah. So we're gonna record this podcast. I'm gonna do some technical stuff, and then we'll meet up around 8ish today. Last time, Manu, you reminded me, oh, Casey, you didn't ask me about what games I'm playing. So here I am asking you, Manu. I'll start with you, and then I'm very curious to see what Dave did the past 3 weeks as well. What's on your radar, Manu, in terms of games?
Just playing Ghost of Tsushima, finally.
Ooh.
After like I don't know, a few years, it's been out on PlayStation and it's been on PC for a few months. And I thought I have to try it at least because the reviews have been good and a lot of players really liked it. So I'm playing it. It's after Dark Souls. It's after Elden Ring, right? So it's a slightly change of tone, of pace. So it's a bit easier, I would say. Also, depending on the difficulty setting you choose, it's a more traditional approach to open world game, I would say. It's very close to Assassin's Creed. It's good. It's well polished. I'm curious to see what Ubisoft will do with the next Assassin's Creed that's also happening in Japan. Interesting to see with what they come. I would say one thing I don't like, but that's me as a player, is you can't skip anything. You can't skip any single line of dialogue. You cannot skip cinematics, nothing. And I understand it's a story-driven open world game, but I think every time you force the player into not being active with your controller, you give him an opportunity to do something else. And this is basically the case, right? I'm just reading stuff on my phone while I'm waiting for the cinematic or for the dialogue to go because they speak at a normal speed, but it's too slow for me. I prefer to have like the text, like subtitles, and then I can read quickly and then skip them because I know the story, but I'm not. This kind of game, it's more about action, right? It's not like a walking simulator or a game maybe like more like Sensua where you want to hear a story, right? Here it's supposed to be more interactive. And I think every time it kind of cuts the action and the involvement from the player. And I'm like, do I want to go through another mission brief where I will have to wait 2 or 3 minutes until people tell me to go to that point on the map? Or do I just stop and come back later? So that's where I am right now. And what I've understood is that when you do a New Game Plus, you can skip everything. So it's almost like I'm looking forward to restart the game in New Game Plus so that I can play with the rhythm I want, which is not really great. I think you should give players the choice, right, to consume the experience the way they want it. That's just
I feel like it's always a problem. It's sort of a tacit acknowledgement that players will skip cutscenes, and they just want to remove the option rather than working on
you
it.
kind of inflate the how long to beat duration also, right? If you're kind of forcing people to go through the dialogue, you're I don't know. I'm just I understand where they're coming from, and I think it's the case for a lot of Sony exclusive games, that you're kind of forced to listen to everything. But I don't know. It gives me more, a player like me feels like I don't want to continue playing, or to have not long sessions because it's too worried. Yeah.
Manu, maybe it has. It's. I feel like what you described also is maybe an accessibility thing as well. As part of it should be part of accessibility features to be able to, skip dialogue or move on or just read text or whatever it is. And it's a bit weird to hear that they didn't have that option. Dave, if you can increase the sound of your microphone,
Okay, let me look at that.
that would be
Hold
appreciated.
on. It does seem to be.
While you're doing that,
Hold on. Yeah, let me look into that. It'll take me one moment. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the listeners have nothing else to do, so they might as well wait for us to solve technical difficulties live.
Okay, Bluetooth and devices.
Because I want to move over to you as well, Dave, and ask you about if you have had the chance to play anything the past 3 weeks.
Maybe I'll just move off of these AirPods real quick.
Well, wait a second. No, don't do any irrational.
The
Let's
infamous.
see. The infamous.
That's probably the quickest way to do this. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we still hear you. That's it.
All right, perfect.
But you have to click the echo cancellation now.
Where's the echo? Yeah, there it is. Okay.
Let's see if that works.
Clicking it. Turn it on. This can't be changed while recording.
Oh no! Back to the earbuds.
Ask Manu a question, and I'll raise the volume on these.
Manu,
maybe we should have a series of how to solve technical problems when we are doing.
Okay.
How to solve technical problems while you're actually recording an episode.
Yes.
How about this? I'll move over to the guys newsletter. Okay. We'll look at and by the way, Manu, I have to talk about some pieces. For those who are listening, I've been walking all day today. Well, I've been walking for the past 3-4 days, but today I was. Oh wow! Now we're getting a lot of interference here.
Okay, am I louder?
You're much louder, which is good.
Much louder. That's just changing it from 70 to 100. You think? Let's try 80.
Oh no! Go back.
89. How's 89?
No, more.
More? 93. Yeah. 93. That's where I live. That's my spot. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So I'm going to answer the question from earlier now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Wasn't playing a ton of games on my break, but I have a nephew who's very interested in the fact that I work in games, as nephews often are. But he is super into Five Nights at Freddy's, which is not necessarily what I'm playing every day in my own time. But I always like to follow the kids where they're going, and that's an interesting thing in a lot of ways. It's, as a consultant, I think there's a lot of changes I would make to it, but it does. You can't deny that it's really successful at building tension in kind of the way it functions. Even if sort of the tension breaks when you realize that it's just it can be really annoying to actually make it through any of it, but it's got good vibes, it's got a good atmosphere, and it does manage that well, that you spend a lot of time stressed out, which is the goal. So that was my gaming, spending a lot of time really stressed out.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Before you came in, I was mentioning that I was. Did you have time to walk around the hallways at Gamescom today?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. So Manu recommended we save that for next week as a postmortem of Gamescom and go through it. I've taken a lot of pictures for research purposes to understand, what is it people are gravitating towards. So as an example, then I'm not going to go too deep into it. The biggest line I saw today was for Monster Hunter, which was very interesting. I'm not sure if that's the same conclusion you had, Dave. When it comes to there are some examples of trends, like the middleware companies are exploding all over the place, which is pretty cool in a way. These are examples. Car brands, and both car brands. So I saw Porsche and Mercedes trying to associate themselves with certain games. Porsche was associating themselves with Overwatch as an example. And then I saw two mobile phone network operators, or just network operators, T-Mobile and another one. They're trying to associate themselves with another, with other games. One of them was even, they made a special Fortnite UGC map that you can only play on site, which is interesting. So these are examples, but we can talk about that next week in more detail. Let's move over to, because of time, let's move over to the guys newsletter. I'll share my screen. The number one item on the list, and I was equally surprised. So now, by the way, I'm sorry, I'm trying to share a window, but I can't share anything apart from, good Lord, I'm sorry about this. I can't share anything apart from Chrome tabs for whatever reason. And I am, let me see if Substack, if I'm logged in. This is the best episode ever. Let me see if this works. I'll talk about it and then I'll solve the thing at the same time. So anyways, highlights, number one item, Black Myth Wukong has massive launch, overtakes Cyberpunk 2077 to become most played single player game ever on Steam, even more than Elden Ring?
Oh yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Elden Ring had a really strong console base too, so it would have been way more split, would be my assumption.
Almost 2 times more. 2.4 million as of today. So it beat the record of yesterday, which is interesting. Wow. So it's not just a fad, and maybe 2 million of that is coming from China. Probably when you see the stat, because it dropped down to less than 300,000 concurrent player when Asia was sleeping. So I think it gives an idea of where the players are right now.
I think someone looked at that and it was like 80. It was north of 80% was coming from China.
Yeah, well, you also see that in the reviews by language of the game. So it's it's not every day that someone comes and beats Palworld or even Counter-Strike 2 Lost Ark. It's now number 2 highest ever concurrent player. It's behind PUBG, but PUBG, 3.3 million back then. Was multiplayer game, different times. But 2.4 million is massive, right? So I think this is the news of this week. It's not from a traditional Western world AAA studio or publisher, right? But it's completely dedicated to the Chinese audience, because it's about historical or mythical stories that really resonate well for the Chinese people and Chinese culture. And I think it's still a discussion about all this culturalization. We discussed a few times already about these kind of Asian studios that are trying to be more successful in the West, but they are also kind of super successful in their own territories by maybe bringing a type of game that was not there before. I don't think there has been a lot of action RPG developed in China so far. They've kind of maybe focused on other type of game or multiplayer games also. But here it's very interesting to see our popularities. And of course it has a ripple effect, right? Because if it's on the top of the list on Steam, then Steam is promoting that game, right? Steam promotes the game, in terms of impression to players, because they have a tendency to increase the popularity of games, right? That's how their algorithms are working on Steam. And so everybody gets more interested, and whenever a record is broken, that's just free free awareness, right? Free PR. So.
So
And the game is good. Also, the game is good, right? It's not a 95 incredible game, but it's good enough to encourage player to try it, right? And I saw some posts on some forums that even the key sellers are running out of keys, right? It's like package all over again. You better pre-order your digital key because they are running out of digital keys, right? It doesn't make sense when you think about it, but it is what it is. So it's it will be very interesting to see how we go from there, and maybe some Western world publisher will say we think maybe we should tailor games that are more culturally relevant toward the Chinese audience because there are millions and millions of players there, and they are ready to buy a AAA game even if it's slightly cheaper in China. Still, it's just
So-
like it's not free to play, right? It's a 50 I think it's like $38 in China, the official price. But
Okay.
yeah,
But I have a
interesting.
couple questions though. One is, if my understanding is that this game is actually tailored to the Chinese market and the Chinese player, like from a cultural perspective. So if I'm hearing correctly, this is like the same application as the Japanese developers, because Japanese developers usually they make games for themselves. Would that be correct? Is this the same analogy? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
And when you're talking about
yeah.
Western audience, when you're talking about Western games, is your message that Western games should focus on making Western-oriented games even more?
No,
No.
my message is that there might be opportunities to do culturally relevant Chinese games by Western studios.
Like
you want
Ghost
to
of Tsushima.
Yes. For example, or like, I mean, Assassin's Creed, the new Shadows. I don't remember the name. We probably also that, but Japan is not China, right? China is so many times bigger, and it has not been the case so far that really there is a lot of I mean, like stories also in China, right? It's not just Japan when you think about Asia, and we as Western people we don't really know that much about that. I think this game reminded me of one of there is a Lego has produced a few sets about Monkey Kid, which I think are also totally relevant to China, right? And people here they see that they don't understand why there is like a story about a monkey, but actually this is been sold in other areas, right? And this is also what you see. It's a stretch, but what you see in the automotive industry, right? The most expensive Mercedes and BMWs are now designed for the Chinese market because that's where they are selling the big numbers. So I don't know, maybe it's something to consider for some studios that are like have too much cannot compete in Western world because of the volume of release and quality and the strength of big publisher. But maybe there is a way to go there. Yeah.
I think for a long time, Western publishers, if they wanted to try and access China, the assumption was that you had to do free to play, you had to do mobile. I mean, like you look at all, the Call of Duty mobile is a game more geared towards the Chinese market, or Diablo Immortal, or things like that. And I think this is going to really push back against that idea, and because this is a kind of game. It's a Chinese cultural subject, but it's a kind of game that is made a lot more in the West, and so developers know how to make that kind of game. And I think that a lot of people are going to have been surprised that kind of game can do so well in a country that is more commonly associated with other kinds.
I'm going to be very interested to see the breakdown of regional sales of this game. That's number one. Quick comment, by the way, on the mobile in relationship to Gamescom. That's another trend that I saw, by the way, which is mobile games are taking space at Gamescom, and not just like this small corner thing, like super massive booths that have costed a lot of money, like Dark and Darker as an example. More on that next week. Okay, really good stuff. I love what you guys are talking about here. Let's move on to the next item, which is the Gamescom Opening Night Live. Now, I have not seen it or read the news, so everything I'm going to see is more or less news for me. But I'll hand it over to you guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not gonna go through the list. There were like big names like Borderlands 4, like a new Mafia game, some stuff about some extra content, DLC for Dying Light, some remasters. What am I missing?
This one was interesting. I saw that on the show floor. In Zoe.
Yeah. Also, Arc Raider. I think it's the game from Mr. Soderlund. What did I see also that was quite interesting? So Little Nightmares 3 and also Re-Animal, which is a game developed by the same studio. And I think that the trajectory of Little Nightmares is quite interesting because it's really started as a small indie game, but it's already number 3. And I think it's growing.
Oh, wow.
And I'm wondering if they will go outside of video games, right? Because they start to have no environment. I think the 3 is probably... I don't know if it's co-op now, so they are adding also that, which will increase the audience. Maybe because we saw with games like It Takes Two that co-op game really have a big audience. There is a bigger audience than maybe some would consider. So let's see about that one. Also, Dune Awakening. It's a MMO, right? But from what I saw, I think it's a bit generic from a visual standpoint, but it could be an interesting one to play, right? For like,
I mean, I like it. It looks like Conan, right? It looks like it's just sort of an evolution of the Conan engine with a lot more stuff in it, which Conan's cool. I like that game, and I'd love to see it expanded into this kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then what else? Some trailers of games that have already been revealed, right? Of course, Monster Hunter Wilds, Warhammer 4.
Mecha Break, by the way, they had a crazy, I don't know how to describe it, but they had a crazy booth at Gamescom.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about that game?
What is the name?
Mecha Break. If you've been itching for some mechanized action on your Xbox Series X console, you want to keep an eye out for Mecha Break's upcoming closed beta. Developer Amazing Seasoon Games confirmed that. Okay, first Xbox, blah blah. It's what is it? It's a 6v6 multiplayer game. Interesting.
No, I've not heard of that one.
Yeah.
So we'll see what there was. I felt also there were like quite a few Netflix games. I saw Netflix a few times during the show, which was interesting. The other thing is when you don't know about, I don't know how to explain that. Before it felt like in these shows, it was only the big names, right? It was the Ubisoft show, the EA show, the Take-Two show, and they're presenting their games. And why they are still doing that, I think, is this kind of show. You don't really know who's a triple A and who's a double I or double A, because even the people with probably less money, less budget, are able to showcase something that's quite compelling, right? So
Absolutely.
For me, I felt like, well, who's doing that one? Is it a big studio or is it a small indie studio? It was difficult for me to really tell, which is good, right? Because it means that anyone can come and show something that could impress the players.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the decade-long story here is that, middleware gets better, distribution gets easier, marketing is more available in lots of different channels, and all of a sudden the benefits of being a giant AAA publisher aren't nearly as strong as they used to be.
You would also add that, there are new players on the scene. So as an example, Crafton. But I'm also, but we've also seen this trend of players or big Western players who are kind of like, not necessarily removing themselves, but not being as vocal as they used to be, or not taking as much space as they used to be. Now, by the way, I'm still speaking about Gamescom because that reflects kind of like the real world or the digital world as well. To your point, Manu, there is no PlayStation booth, there is no EA booth, there is no Ubisoft booth. It was an Assassin's Creed booth. It wasn't a Ubisoft booth. While
But-
it used to be.
Go. No,
Yeah.
I mean, the root cause of that could be that these big AAA publishers, they've decided to focus on a smaller number of franchises. So they don't
That is
have
also
10
true.
games to showcase, right? Or not even
No.
5, maybe sometime. So they might be like, well, we don't have enough to do our own shows anymore, or maybe to be on a booth. And that could also be one of the reasons we saw that all these big publishers are streamlining their IPs, right? You can feel that.
Cool. Gentlemen, let's move on to the next story. In the news section, legendary roguelike Dead Cells. Oh yeah, of course, it's a legendary roguelike. It gets its final update after 7 years with new mobs, weapons, accessibility options, and more. That's so. I mean, Dead Cells, 7 years.
Dead Cells.
Yeah, and you
Yeah,
don't need the
that's a
live
great
service,
game.
right? You don't need the live service.
It is a live service in my book, but
Yeah,
yes,
it's a lot.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like live service. Anytime you're selling stuff after you release a game, that's a live service. Even if you're not selling stuff, even every time you're making stuff after
Absolutely.
you release a game, that's a live service. Like No Man's Sky, right? All those updates are free. That's still a live service.
Yeah, I see what you mean. My point is more, keep improving your game with some more content and you will sell more units. Release it on different platforms and you will sell 2 or 3 times the same game to the same player. That's also the thing. And it's sometimes that's enough, right? You don't need, because I'm sure it's kind of a low maintenance game after the launch to develop more and more stuff. So, and also some collabs and you're there 7 years later, and then the next one is coming very soon. And I'm so sure it's going to be a huge success.
Yeah. Plus, the original developer turned it over. I can't remember their names. Turned it over to another developer to do the maintenance, so they didn't have to sort of get burned out on their own game, which I think was a really smart move. But I think we're going to see a lot. You know, this is just a traditional DLC model. They you pay stuff and you get more stuff for your game. And I think what really works about that is that there's less risk. Sorry, you're saying?
No, sorry. I was gonna add, to that trend of games that live, and we talked about this before. Both Terraria and Stardew Valley as other examples.
Yeah, and Stardew Valley is all free. Some of the Dead Cells ones are paid. Maybe they're all paid, or some are paid, some are free. What's great about that is if you sign up, if you from the beginning say you're going to do live service and you sell cosmetics and you sell that kind of thing, then there's a real pressure to keep up with that, to make those purchases real, to make sure that people feel that they are getting what they asked for. But with this model, like, you just release as much as you want to sell and you sell it, you know, and like, let's say the game didn't do well and you're not making as much, that's fine. You already sold them the original thing, which is all you promised.
A new Sims-like game. It's called Inzoi or Inzui. I don't know how to say that, but if I understand correctly, Crafton just dropped a free demo where you can just customize your character. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, what is it? Live by You has just been cancelled a few weeks ago.
Yes.
So there's not so many competitors left for
Speak
the
about
Sims.
coincidence.
Yeah, what a coincidence. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's an opening there. Sims people are not always happy with the state of Sims 4, and it's gonna be hard to move them to Sims 5. So I think it's definitely an opening. But my concern is that it looks a little, like Life by You. It has slightly more realistic art style, and I'm just not sure that a realistic art style is a great pair for this kind of game. Like, in Sims, people like to do things like lock people in their basements and force them to paint paintings for money. Other people, I would never.
Yeah.
But that just gets a lot weirder when you have a realistic art style.
Yeah. Let's see. But I mean, it's Crafton behind it, right? It's not a small publisher. It's not a small indie project neither. So I think they are serious about it, and also they can probably capture a Asian audience easily. than the Sims. Maybe with some limitation in the creativity also, but we'll see that how it goes very very soon.
Cool. Speaking of games that have been in development forever, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 delayed again. I'm not sure, did they even announce any new release date for this to be considered delayed again?
It was supposed to be fall 2024, and now they say first half of 2025.
Man, I saw a gameplay demo for that. I don't know, like 6 years ago, something like that.
I was gonna say
At
5 years
GDC?
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
they did.
It's just that these are the kind of game that takes forever to develop. Sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss.
I'm actually just surprised that it's
I gotta check
still
one thing.
in development.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's look at the next item here. Hunt Showdown. Steam's reviews take a battering after the colossal 1896 update brings dreary UI and starting to the. So, interesting enough, I was talking to a developer from Crytek about Hunt Showdown, and they were mentioning that this was like one of the biggest updates they've ever made. That was either released a couple weeks ago or very recent at least.
Mm-hmm.
But what can we learn from this?
Well, apparently the UI is not great, right? It's not really about the content; it's more about the UI and like let's say that the journey of the player through the menus and this kind of stuff, and then instantly you got negative reviews on Steam, right? It started 15th of August, so 6 days ago, and
Okay.
yeah. So it's a bit sad because everything seems to be good content-wise, but it's just ruined by an UI that I don't know if they thought it would be nice, fine for the players. I don't know, or they tested their ideas, but apparently there is a mismatch between player expectation and what the developer thought that would be better, an improvement.
Cool. Let's move on to the next item then. Oh, I'm reading the word bully here. I haven't heard that word in a very long time. Bully on GTA Plus is not a new version. Well, what is this about?
It's about Bully, the game, which has been rumored for a long time that there will be remaster, remakes, and it's every other month it comes and there is someone saying, yeah, new Bully is coming or something. It's more of a dormant IP at this point. And there were rumors, I think, last week that something was approved in Taiwan for PlayStation 5 Bully related, so people were starting to wonder if it's a remake or remaster or something like that. But apparently, they're just dropping it on the GTA Plus, which is the small subscription service from Rockstar. So yeah, that's just another disappointment, let's say, for the future of the franchise.
Dave, I don't want to put you.
Like people.
Sorry, I was going to say.
Put me on.
I was going to say I don't want to put pressure on you. Did you ever play Bully?
So, I played Bully, I think, for probably like 3 hours. Back on PS2. I love that they made that game. Clearly, I didn't feel compelled to play a whole lot more of it. There's a lot of games I love that they exist, but I'm not necessarily going to play them. And Bully is definitely one of those. Like, it's cool. But I think at the end of the day, I'm not. I think that the Bully fan base is super vocal, but maybe not that big.
I'm sorry for cutting you off. There was another train of thought you had.
Another train of thought. Maybe it was just that. I don't know.
Sorry about this. It's really hard when you're sitting on a laptop trying to navigate between the tabs and reading the news. Was there any other further comments about Bully, Manu, or should I move on? Okay, I'm getting a head nod here. Moving on to the trends then. Many of Epic's exclusivity deals were not good investments. Says Tim Sweeney, but the free games program has been just magical. That's interesting. What can we learn here?
Well,
I mean, I think you said, they're magical for like user acquisition, which like it's not a complicated lesson really. Like if you give people free stuff, they'll download the program that requires them to download the free stuff. I mean, I looked at my Epic Games account the other day. I've got like 200 games. I probably bought like 5 of them. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward, really.
And there are 2 ways to acquire new players, right? So you do this exclusivity, so you force player to come to your platform, or you just tell them that if you come, you will have free stuff. And I think one is more toxic than the other. And in the end, all these games that have been released exclusively on the Epic Game Store, they probably have missed opportunity to make more money outside of that platform, right? Let's be serious. Steam is still 80-90% of the market share for PC. So
Yep.
It's a no-brainer, but probably some of these exclusive titles, they just got the check from Epic, and then they just took the money and were fine with it. But
we saw some of the stuff in that Discovery for the Apple lawsuit. We saw some stuff in Discovery that a lot of those checks weren't as big as we sort of imagined they might have been at the time.
Yep.
Yeah, and as a player, it's still sad that you cannot play Control or you cannot play Alan Wake 1 or 2 outside of the Epic Game Store, right? On PC.
I see. I mean, I believe, if I remember correctly, wasn't Hades 1 exclusively on Epic a long time ago before it actually went to other platforms?
Potentially. A funny thing is that whenever a game that has been exclusive on Epic Games Store for maybe 1 year comes on Steam, it makes like 10 times the sales, right?
Yeah.
So,
but
nobody talked about Hades when it came out in the beginning. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. Well, it was early access in the beginning. I think it was when it hit 1.0, it was big. But I think that's not. You see that same phenomenon happen with Sony games. It's slightly different because it's different platforms, but staggering release is a funny tool a lot of the times because you can sort of generate momentum and then give yourself a big punctuation mark to sell a lot more units.
Remember, Dave, when exclusives mattered?
Oh, I remember. Pepperidge Farm remembers.
But do they still matter, do you think? And if we dismiss the story about Epic and just focus, generally speaking, on other platforms or platforms in general, do exclusives matter anymore?
They matter for Nintendo.
Gotcha. That's a good point.
For everyone else, Microsoft was a great example of this. I mean, they weren't able to develop a strong enough exclusive to really make things count on that. But it also just shows the problems about doing it overall. And I think one of the biggest problems is that there's a ton of great games out there. And if I'm sitting here with my PlayStation and I want to play these Microsoft exclusives, I'm just going to play one of the way too many awesome games I have available to me. And it's difficult to make the same impact with a single title that you used to be able to.
Okay. Now, then, speaking of exclusives, there is this news story. Xbox Phil Spencer explains decision to launch Indiana Jones and the Great Circle on PS5. Now, Xbox has chosen to keep some, franchises. Obviously, there's the deal with the Call of Duty thing. That's a different thing. But they've chosen to keep some things on their platform, and they've chosen some things like this one to be across other platforms. What can we learn from this?
I think Microsoft is in the business of making money, right? Not so much of selling console. So that the most money you can make is probably at this point by releasing all your games also on all platforms possible, rather than trying to push more players to buy console. And I think maybe also it's more of a single player game, so not real live service, not many microtransactions, so it doesn't matter that much if the player doesn't stay in the ecosystem, because it's only temporary, right? It's not gonna play for a long time, that game probably. And the lines we see the lines are blurred, right? We see that one way to the other. There was also a comment from, I think, the CEO of Square Enix saying we think the next Final Fantasy could also come on Xbox very quickly. So stop the exclusivity with Sony. So I think it's more a thing of the past. But you probably will still keep temporary exclusivity with some titles. I think that's more where it's going.
Okay. Any other comments on this, Dave, or should I move on? Okay, yes, sir. This next item is very interesting to me. The state of game publishing, the era of the generalist indie publisher is over. Just reading the title, do I understand correctly that is the story trying to say like that publishers should focus on a certain type of genre and game, or what am I supposed to learn from this?
Yeah, I think also there is the fact that the like traditional publishers, they focus on their big IPs, right? So they have less money to spend on like more indie project within a more corporate structure. I think some indie labels have also like they talking about the Humble Games, for example. So they have a tendency to focus on their core business or their core IPs and don't throw too much money to test new things. And yeah, I think it all boils down to profitability, right? There are less people able to finance that, and yeah, it's probably better to go to a specific niche than trying to be too generic when you develop your game.
Yeah, I think it's just a discoverability. Discoverability is one of the great kind of questions of game publishing and game development right now, and brands really help a lot with that. And so, if you've got an indie publishing brand, it used to be just enough that your brand was we make games that you want to play, or we have the marketing muscle for these developers. But increasingly, I think that you need to have a slightly more specific brand. So maybe you're the guys to go to for horror games. And we've seen some success with that in particular in the past. It's just it makes it a slightly easier mental leap for players to make. They say, "I like this. These guys make that. Let's go." Like I'm a huge fan of Rusty Lake, and they're starting to publish games kind of in that world. And so, if Rusty Lake were to publish a platformer, I'd be like, weird. But if Rusty Lake publishes a sort of unsettling horror game from a different developer, it looks a little different. Like, okay, these guys know about unsettling point-and-click horror games,
Yeah,
Gotcha.
and there is this idea that the bigger publisher and companies, they are now risk averse. But whenever a newcomer comes with a good gameplay idea, then they will jump on it and build their AAA version of that game. A bit like with the Battle Royale games or some other concept. It's kind of when the new gameplay feature has been proven successful, then that's when they jump in. So they don't test the water anymore. Yeah.
They don't research and develop new ideas, which is fair enough. The next item is one of those questions that I usually ask you, Manu. Who the hell is Sporty Group, and what is it called again? What is sociable soccer?
It's a good question. I put it there because it's always interesting when something new is happening in the football, in the soccer market.
Sports
I think it's
and betting entertainment company.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that they're like a not video game company that's merging with a video game company to bring more betting and to merge with the sports betting, sports, and then video games. That was more the idea of putting that there.
Fair enough, and again, walking, like I mentioned before, walking the hallways at Gamescom, I did notice a lot of, let's call it, non-endemic businesses trying to find a way to get into gaming. And we talked about the Korean one, Hybe, a couple of weeks ago. So that's that is absolutely a trend, right? I'll move on to the rumors. Xbox report. Oh, sorry. Did I miss something?
You missed the previous one, yes.
Nearly 90% of developers surveyed say premium games don't need microtransactions. That's
Oh,
that's surprising for developers to say, but I would love to hear from you on your thoughts reading this.
I don't know. It feels a bit weird because like the developers don't want them, the players don't want them. So who wants them?
I feel like
The
the
Maybe
word
people with the
need
money.
is doing the work. The word
yeah,
need is doing a lot of work
exactly.
here.
So
Like,
it's kind of I don't know. It's weird. Something feels counterproductive, right?
I mean,
When
let's say you have a fully featured premium game like Assassin's Creed that's got cosmetics in there. Maybe too many, maybe not. Whatever. People will play Assassin's Creed Valhalla. They'll be happy about it, and as a complete single player AAA game. And if the people in charge see that you can get $5 extra out of some of those people, then they're just that's the word need is not the operative one here. It's possible to put microtransactions in. And that's kind of all there is to it. Like people were not pissed off that there were cosmetic microtransactions in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, so they're going to be in there, and it made some money.
What's interesting? I was talking to a developer who worked for a big Japanese publisher, and they're working on a game, and they're contemplating selling that game for $130. Now, I'm personally all up for increasing game prices and in the premium space, just to avoid these types of situations where you have to nickel and dime or find mechanics or find things that might not be as fun for the player. $130 is probably pushing it. If you're not Elden Ring, you probably cannot charge $130. But any thoughts about that?
I like it theoretically. I like weird stuff. It doesn't seem like a great idea.
Manu, are you churning?
Yeah, no, sorry, I was somewhere else in my mind. I was thinking about Star Wars Outlaws, which was coming with a very traditional approach to extra content and special editions. I don't know if
The new Star Wars one, the Ubisoft one. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen also all the SKUs for the next Dragon Age game. They have 5 or 6 different editions, with some editions not even having the game included. So it's kind of, I feel like we are backward in time also with all these editions. It's kind of interesting.
Is this part of the financial, not necessarily financial crisis, but a dilemma where they're trying to find new ways, or not necessarily new ways, but go back to that barrel and scrape at the bottom of the barrel to find that the missing part of the forecast that will make things look good.
I mean, I think again we come back to this question of need. It's just how much can you do before it begins to damage things, and the going theory is that it's a lot. And as much as we might make fun of that kind of thing, games have done fine with it in the past. And that it's not a question of whether or not people like these things or want these things necessarily. It's whether or not or like them in a philosophical way. In a practical way, they'll say, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that," and that just matters more than how we think these things should be structured. And as far as $130 would make sense in a lot of ways for how much it costs to make a modern game, but there are psychological barriers that we are working with here, and people are just say, "Well, I'm going to buy 2 other games, and then maybe I'll spend $80 on microtransactions in them, or I'll spend $300 in my weird little mobile game that I'm obsessed with at the moment." But it's just what people are accustomed to doing. They're going to do, and it's really hard to make that change. Change it by $10, move it to $70. That's a little more doable.
Thank you, Dave. Sorry, Manu, did you have another addition to that?
No.
Then I'm gonna move over to the rumors, my friends. And the first one that we have on the list says Xbox reportedly reviving old Marvel Activision games.
Yeah, I mean, one of them is Deadpool, and the other is Marvel Ultimate Alliance. I think it comes back to the news we had also recently about Microsoft and Xbox and Activision setting up a team to look at all the IPs they have in their catalog and see if they can release any smaller games. Or maybe they're just going through all their portfolio because they acquired so many IPs and then they're checking where they can make money out of it. And yeah, I think it's probably relevant right now because of the success again of a Deadpool movie. I think it's just like that.
You know, it's like the Fallout thing, though, where that did so well and it sold the back catalog. But I think people really got to start learning to move on these things before, as opposed, because by the time that some of this stuff works, the glow is going to be off. Won't be gone, but it'll be off. And had those games been available this week instead of some other week, it'd been a lot better.
And in the opposite way, let's hope everybody forgets about the Borderlands movie when Borderlands 4 is released.
Yeah, they'll forget. They'll forget. I mean, the people that saw it will forget.
Yeah.
Then I'll move on to the next item, gentlemen. ARM reportedly is developing gaming GPUs. I'm really happy if this is true because obviously more competition is great. Any thoughts about this?
I think that's interesting that ARM was almost bought by NVIDIA a few years ago. Was not allowed to, I think. And yeah, I mean, there is a big cake, right? Not many people right now are just taking part of the cake. Intel is trying with the Arc chips, but Intel has so many problems right now with their processor. Then I don't know how it is going. And then NVIDIA is so far ahead that it's always interesting to see a newcomer. ARM is more known for making mobile hardware, not that much. But there is also merging between mobile, laptop, and desktop technology, right? In some way. So some laptops are now running with ARM chips in the same way, the same that you have a mobile phone. So you can almost say that a laptop is closer to a mobile phone from a technical standpoint and from a desktop.
Absolutely.
So interesting to see where this go. Maybe it's just also just to make the stock price go higher, and it's just not happening.
Yes.
But it's
see a bunch of people selling it, right after that announcement, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Gentlemen,
yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
If I ARM's good at making stuff real small. NVIDIA's off a whole lot better than it used to be. I got a 3080 in this laptop right here, and it's a lot smaller than the normal one. But if I can get an ultrabook scale thing with a genuine graphics card in it, that would be really cool. And I feel like that is theoretically what ARM's expertise is.
When it comes to MacBooks, does Apple do their own chips or do they use other people's chips?
Yeah.
Must use other people's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who makes MacBook chips?
That could be interesting. Because it makes you wonder, is that an opportunity for them then to kind of make chips and deliver?
According to Wikipedia, manufacturing the chips is outsourced to semiconductor contract manufacturers, but they are sort of designing them.
Gotcha.
They're proprietary. It's their own, right? It's not Intel or anything.
Yeah.
They design it themselves. Yes. And,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, we're at the numbers now, and there is one item here on the list, which is a bit of a sad item, and I would love for you to explain to me in what sectors this is happening. So tech layoffs reach 132,000 in 8 months into 2024.
Yeah,
am I reading this correctly?
Yeah. It's not just video games, right? Obviously, but it shows that this whole sector is being shaken right now. Has been shaken for the past 18 months, probably.
It's not just tech either. There's lots of sectors doing this. Tech's worse than others, but a lot of people, a lot of sectors are cutting back.
Yeah.
Is this as big as Y2K, or am I exaggerating here? What does this mean for for I guess the everyday life of people, for technology in general. Like if all those people and all that knowledge is kind of like now in the ether or whatever.
Mostly, I wonder, if we live in a consumer society, right? The resource that we're working with is consumers. They can buy stuff.
Yep.
That's kind of what makes the whole engine go. And it's currently treated as an infinite resource. But there is a point at which, we are going to cut off our supply of consumers by giving all of our money to like 4 or 5 people. And that is going to stop working.
Yeah, I would be less worried about knowledge loss. I think there was a lot of fat in some companies, right? Let's be honest. So I think it's still probably fine like this. Doesn't mean that it's always the right people that are being let go, but there is probably some fat in this organization. Some organizations have also grown very fast, very quickly, right? And they got like bulimic during the pandemic. But I agree that someone that doesn't work and doesn't get paid is not going to consume in the same way as someone that is fully employed and get all these bonuses and everything. So,
especially with
tipping point.
Sorry, Manu. Especially with inflation and some people being addicted to pressing a button and making money up from nowhere.
Yeah.
Yes. Not to get political. America.
If I was in the area, I mean, yeah, we got a lot of those buttons. We like pressing them. It's working out so far. We're just gonna see. We're just gonna ride that train. I was over there, as I said. Seems to all still be together. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough thing to consider.
Gentlemen, I don't want to be too political here, but at the same time, in relationship to, we've obviously in the past weeks we've been talking a lot about like the rise of the Asian giants of video games, which is really cool. More competition is awesome, but at the same time, as the world is kind of like almost breaking in half in terms of like left, east and west. And then we're seeing BRICS, if you're familiar with BRICS, and the de-dollarization and all these things that are happening all at once. What kind of impact would that, do you think? Like, what are we looking at in the upcoming 5 years, let's say, in the video game industry? Should people be wary of anything specific? Like, should they, when it comes to, let's say, what type of software they integrate, what type of payment solutions they should be thinking about, these type of things, what kind of impact can we expect? It's a big question, I know. I'm sorry about that.
I can see some of those problems, definitely. I can see some problems like that definitely rearing their head. I think what's always been interesting about video games is I think it might be the only natively international business. Because, if you think about the tech industry, even that kind of grows out of, older tech companies, IBM and Texas Instruments, all places like that. Those existed before the internet, but games have always been international. Pac-Man is a Japanese game that was one of the first major hits in the West, and so it is such a part of the international fabric of this kind of modern era that it'd be, I don't know, could really break things up if we start to move back to a sort of a more Cold War economic landscape. It's hard to say, but all the stuff that we're talking about Western publishers reaching out to Asian markets, that could easily melt away.
Manu, any thoughts there?
I think nobody likes to lose a dominant position, right? But I think Western world is kind of losing a little bit that position of like they decide about everything. They have their big shows. That's where the audience is. That's where the spending are. The creativity is. And I think it's a bit challenging, right? I would just mention that at this point.
Thank you, Dave, for shining a bright light on this situation. I really appreciate that.
Bright light. It's coming from
there you
direction.
Go. Yes, yeah. And we're getting that Jesus effect on you a bit.
Yeah.
There you go. I feel like the light on me is not that good. I feel like I have a lot of, maybe it's the camera, maybe it's the quality, I don't know. But in any case,
you're a star. We've got some nice stars on you.
we got some diamonds here. Yes, for sure.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you so much. Gentlemen, I really appreciate this. It's been fun recording from a hotel room, a remote location. We're going to continue exploring Gamescom. I think next week is probably maybe going to just be focused on, like, Manu, you'll pull the stories, we'll pull the real life quote unquote data and research, and we'll come together and like talk more about what we think is happening. Everything from trends, what we've seen on site, games like what's the game called again? Wulong? No, I'm sorry, I'm butchering it. Wukong. Thank you. That type of stuff that is like, having major impact. Like, holy shit, who would have thought AAA from China, right? So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you again so much for your time. Don't forget to stick around because I need you to upload the stuffs. But other than that, thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Take it easy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.